Check 1, 2.
Did you already sign it?
We'll call this December 19th meeting of the Planning, Zoning, and Agriculture Committee to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Olthoff? Mr. Featherling?
Present.
Mr. Tripp? Mr. Tholen? Ms. Polk?
Present.
Mr. Payton?
Present.
Ms. Peters? Ms. Dunbar?
Present.
Mr. Kinzinger? Mr. Fairfield?
Present.
Mr. Carrico?
Present.
Mr. Smith?
Present.
Mr. Swanson?
Present.
Ms. Zuccolo? Mr. Wheeler?
Present.
Mr. Searoy?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, the minutes of September 19th, October 17th, and November 21 are available in your email. Is there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve? Mr. Payton and Mr. Fairfield. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Building report for October 2018.
Good morning. In your packet, you'll have a document that looks like this. That is the building report for October 2018 for the Building Division of the Planning Department. In October, we issued permits for 4 new homes and issued a total of 88 permits, totaling $62,613 in revenue, which is almost 3 times what we collected for the same month in 2017, which was only $23,000. What made the majority of that increase was a permit to Nucor Steel and 1 to the Servants of the Holy Heart of Mary. So we're going to submit this report for your approval.
Motion to approve by Ms. Polk, seconded by Mr. Featherling. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Stormwater program discussion.
As part of our MS4 stormwater program, I'm required every month to ask the committee if they have any stormwater issues in the county that they would like to discuss or have our department review.
Seeing none, going on to agreement for electrical inspections with Gary Phillips.
Yes. In your packet is a copy of the agreement between the planning department and Kankakee County and Gary Phillips for electrical inspections. This is prompted by the number of commercial and industrial permits that we've seen this year and we are anticipating for next year. This contractor would only be doing inspections on the commercial and industrial permits and only when our existing staff cannot perform the inspection. For his services, he would receive $75 per inspection, a $75 a month stipend, which would allow us access to him via phone and email, and we would pay for his liability insurance up to $300. The quotes I've seen is about $220 right now.
There a motion to approve? By Mr. Fairfield, second by Ms. Polk. Any questions? This would be a roll call vote, I believe, correct?
We are spending money.
Yes.
Mr. Olthoff?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Ms. Polk? Aye. Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Ms. Dunbar? Aye. Mr. Fairfield?
Aye.
Mr. Carrico?
Aye.
Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Swanson?
Aye.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Under planning, overview of the planning department.
Sure.
Is this the 30?
Right, just one question before we move on.
Yes,
I apologize.
just a minute. Yeah.
Thank you, 13, lucky 13. Have you spoken with, could you at least mention this to Anita, just to call our liability carrier to see if we have to add him as an additional insured?
Sure, but we did that with the plumbing contractor
Right.
over the summer, and this is almost the same thing.
Right. Just,
So,
I want to make
but we
sure.
can double check
Yeah,
that
just
if you
double
like.
check.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, with this overview, is this a 30,000 foot or 300 foot overview?
30,000 foot.
Okay.
We'll get to the 300 in subsequent months. Kelly, could you switch me over here? Maybe. All right, we have some new members now, so I thought I'd give a very brief, quick overview of the planning department, who we are and what we do. What is the planning department? The term planning department is generally used to refer to the entire department, but in fact, it's actually two departments and an organization. We have the planning department, the GIS department, and the Kankakee Area Transportation Study, also known as the MPO, that is under the planning department. Each has its own budget, employees, and revenue sources, although we do have, because of our limited staff, have a lot of sharing of employees. Who is the planning department, GIS department, and the MPO? Well, the department head is myself. I'm in charge of all three. Michelle Sadler's our office manager. Melanie Grubbs is our clerical support that helps Michelle. Steve Marion heads up our building division. And he has Julius Liptak, Keith Mosier as code enforcement officers. And under contract, we have Mike Magruder for plumbing inspections. And based on today's vote, Gary Phillips will be for commercial electrical inspections. Daniel Bishop is our only employee in the GIS department, and Jeffrey Olson and Mike, he brings up heads up our transportation division for the MPO, and Michael Mergenthaler is a planner that works under him. We have 8 full-time employees, 1 part-time employee, and 2 under contract. Here's a staffing chart. It's a little complicated there, but it shows you how all of those people fit in underneath each division. If you look at the ones that are dashed out, those are open positions. We are currently have a job description posted for Transportation Economic Development Project Coordinator. We intend to post one for a permit technician somewhere in the spring. And I'm currently discussing with the Highway Department about bringing their GIS duties into the GIS department with some type of cost share for an employee there. I guess Mark feels that what he has is not enough to warrant a full-time position, but so we could do some kind of sharing on that. The GIS department also pays a portion of 2 salaries in the assessment office for mapping. What's the purpose of the planning department? taken straight out of state statute. It's promote and protect the health, safety, comfort, morals, and general welfare of Kankakee County and its inhabitants. So we are a public safety department. We also develop and maintain a comprehensive plan and any auxiliary plans as needed, such as Greenways and Trails Plan, Hazard Mitigation Plan, Solid Waste Plan, etc. How do we accomplish this? Well, by administering and enforcing the county's land development regulations. And they're quite extensive. The Building and Building Regulations, Chapter 105, and there's a listing of all of the ones that go under that. Contractor registration, which is also part of 105. Solid Waste, Chapter 46, but we only partially administer that. We have not had any staff since I think about 2008, full-time staff that works on that. Flood damage prevention, which is floodplain management, Chapter 109. Stormwater management is also Chapter 109, Article 3. Impact fees, Chapter 113. The subdivision code, Chapter 117. Historic preservation, Chapter 119. And the one you'll see probably most, zoning, Chapter 121. Now, what's the purpose of the GIS department? By resolution of the county board, the GIS department is charged with maintaining, updating, and distributing 8 framework layers, which are listed on the slide up there, for use by the county and its GIS partners, which are the about 5 municipalities. So that's the aerial photography, cadastral data, addresses, soils, survey control, street center lines, political and regulatory boundaries, and the planimetrics and topography. We do more than that, such as creating applications to use this data, but this is the core of what we are required to do. What's the purpose of CATS, or the MPO? This is funded by a grant from the state that is funneled, or from the federal government, which is funneled through the state. Ensures compliance with federal surface transportation requirements for the urbanized area, which is Kankakee, Bradley, Bourbonnais, Manteno, and Aroma Park. We determine and approve federal surface transportation funds being spent in that area. And we, of course, review and plan major transportation projects within the region. Requirement of that program is to develop and manage a long-range transportation plan every 5 years. And we are currently in the process of updating that plan. And every year we must publish a transportation improvement plan, which shows all of the projects being performed for the next 5 years. And we monitor and support the Rural Public Transportation Program, which is also, ShowBus is our provider. Many people just refer to it as ShowBus. Who are our partners? These are all the people we work with to get this job done. For planning, we report to the Regional Planning Commission and work with them, Zoning Board of Appeals, Historic Preservation Commission, Kankakee County Enterprise Zone Board, and the Kankakee River Valley Enterprise Zone Board. For building, they report to the Board of Examiners. For CATS, they have the MPO Policy Committee, the MPO Technical Advisory Committee, a Safety Committee, and they work with the River Valley Metro Board. GIS Department has a GIS Committee and has formed a GIS Users Forum for our partners to discuss technical issues. And that's kind of the 30,000-foot overview of our department, who we are and what we are. Future topics for coming meetings, we will get more into the weeds on some of this, but and I brought up some possibilities. I will kind of leave that up to the committee as to what they would like to hear about. But I think the next one will probably be the zoning process if I don't have any other recommendations. Yes, that's it.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Delbert. Ex parte communications to the committee.
At every meeting, we ask if any board members have any ex parte communications that they would like to bring forward to the committee, thus making them no longer ex parte communications. So if you've had any communications on any zoning cases prior to this meeting, now would be the time to disclose them if you would like.
Mr. Wheeler.
Just a quick question. Can you explain for the new members why that's necessary and what ex parte means, just so they are clear, especially on solar farms and other types of things?
Yeah, okay. Zoning cases must follow the public hearing process, and the public hearing process must be transparent. Communications between yourselves, citizens, applicants, or anyone else outside of that public hearing process is not transparent and can open up the county to liabilities, can get cases overturned in the courts. So it's best not to do that. But sometimes it occurs, you receive a letter, you don't know what the letter says until you've opened it and read it. In those instances, bring it to the committee, bring it into the public realm, and then the ex parte communications has been removed. This is what Graham has stated in a previous meeting, so I am no attorney, but that is my take on it. It's really, you know, it's meant to be a very transparent everything in the public process. So we want to try to keep it that way, and it certainly does protect us if any of these zoning cases were to go into litigation.
Okay, after hearing that, has anybody had any ex parte communication? You're not sure? Has anybody contacted you about any of these cases? Oh, okay.
And I would say no.
In general, just the coffee shop comments or discussions, you know,
okay.
I've heard them talking about different solar farm applications, but
nothing specific to these cases.
No.
Okay.
That's fine. And until an application is received, there is no ex parte communication. So if you've heard about a project that might occur, if it hasn't actually officially been applied for, then you can talk about it for sure. And that's
okay. Going on, ZBA case 1844, request for a special use permit 121-99C34 solar farm in the A1 agricultural district on a parcel generally situated in section 2 of Aroma Township. Petitioners are Carol E. Cyrier Trust, property owner, and Sunrise Development LLC applicant.
This is an application for a 4 megawatt community solar garden on approximately 35 to 40 acres of a 160 acre parcel shown on the map in red up there. They have moved the solar farm all the way back to the northwest corner of the property to minimize congestion at the road. It's a, like I said, 2 megawatts. There's a road that goes, or a access driveway that goes along the western portion of the property to access it. The developer has worked with surrounding property owners. Apparently there are 2 or 3 drainage tiles running through this particular area of this property, and at their own expense they will be rerouting those drain tiles onto the neighboring property, and they have an agreement with those neighbors for doing that. And in fact, one of the adjoining property owners spoke at the public hearing Monday night stating that they were fine with the agreement and that it would they had no problem with the solar farm. ZBA recommended the approval of this special use permit on December 17th, Monday night, with conditions 6-1. Public comment was Tim Browers, who is the neighbor who owns the property to the north, one of the ones that has the agreement on it. There is a third property owner that does not have an agreement yet, but they are still working on it. So that was added as a condition down below. The LISA score on this property is 224.6, which is a moderate score for agricultural protection. There are 3 conditions. One is all ground cover established on the site shall be a type which is pollinator friendly to help support agriculture. 2, all landscaping shall abide by any and all rules as outlined in the weed and grass control plan and is subject to the same penalties as weed and grass. And 3, an agreement concerning drainage tile and tile maintenance be entered into with the adjoining property owner to the west. The applicant has agreed to all of these conditions.
Is there a motion to approve? Ms. Dunbar, seconded. Mr. Fetterling, any discussion?
I had a question.
Yes, sir.
I asked over what the
Microphone.
reason or what the purpose of the no vote was.
That would have been Mr. Hem, and he felt that the high LISA score was
220.
224.6.
Which was moderate.
When you get to 225, you are in the high range, so it's right at that borderline.
Seems like most of them are 150s, 180s, right?
We've had a few that low. That's a really low score. The majority of them have been in the 180, 190 range.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Going on to ZBA case 1848, request for special use permit 121-99C34 solar farm in the A1 agricultural district on a parcel generally situated in section 17 of Momence Township. The petitioners are the estate of Gary Thifolt, Kara Ray Simpson, independent executor, property owner, and SVCSG Momence 2 LLC applicant.
Okay. This is another request for a special use permit for a 2 megawatt, this time 2 megawatt solar farm. The property's on the corner of Vincent's Trail and County Highway, I believe it's 13 in Momence Township. It's outlined on the map on the screen in red. The site plan for it, the county board has already approved a 2 megawatt solar farm at that corner and rezoned the property to A1 agriculture, which was case 18-22. This would be an additional 2 megawatt facility immediately east of that one. And this time they've actually developed a landscape plan to go along with it. As you can see, they're going to landscape the entire southern boundary of the site and the 2 northern corners of the site. ZBA recommend the approval of the special use permit on December 10th with the conditions, and the vote was 7-0. There's public comment from Timothy Navratil, Jay Kerouac, and Timothy Burton. The Lisa score on this property is 188.4, which is a low category. And the conditions, 3 conditions. 1, all ground cover established on the site shall be a type which is pollinator friendly to help support agriculture. 2, all landscaping shall abide by any and all rules as outlined in the weed and grass control plan and is subject to the same penalties as weed and grass. And 3, the submitted landscape plan shall be modified to extend the landscaping an additional 50 feet north of its current location in the southwest corner of the project area. So if I back up here, that southwest corner where their entrance is, one of the conditions is to extend that 50 feet farther north. The applicant agreed to these conditions.
Go back one slide. I mean,
which one? This one?
Is that the whole project? I mean,
that would be both projects combined. Okay. Yes. You see that kind of dark line down the middle of those rows? Yeah. That's the project boundary. Okay. Between the 2.
Because the original one, it looked like it was between the red lines. Looked like it was a whole piece, but it's.
No, the previous case, you've seen the whole piece because the rezoning had to occur on the entire property. Right. The special use permit does not apply to the entire property.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve? Mr. Payton, Mr. Featherling, any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. ZBA case 18-49, request for special use permit 121-99C34 solar farm in the A1 agricultural district on a parcel generally situated in section 14 of St. Anne Township. Petitioners are Larry and Linda Kleinert, property owners, and SVCSG St. Anne 2 LLC is the applicant.
This is another 2 megawatt addition to a already approved 2 megawatt solar farm on this property. Similar to the previous one, they're adding another 2 megawatts immediately east of the already approved special use permit for 2 megawatts. At the public hearing, ZBA recommended the approval of the special use permit with conditions 7-0. There was no public comment. The Lisa score is 180.2, which is a low rating, and the 2 standard conditions were recommended and the applicant agreed to those.
Is there a motion to approve? Ms. Dunbar, Mr. Fairfield, any discussion? Whoops, Mr. Siroy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Del, how big can these solar farms get? We've added 2 expansions. What's the cap?
That's it.
That's the cap?
That's it. The state rules say that you cannot have more than 4 megawatts, two 2 megawatt facilities on any given parcel.
My question is why go through the process twice then? Why didn't these applicants?
Well, that rule changed. So
Okay.
I think when they first applied, that rule was not in place.
Gotcha.
That rule has only been clarified in the last 2 or 3 months.
Okay, that's why the expansions. I see.
Yes. Yeah, and they can have it by the same developer. They can't have more than 4 megawatts on 2 adjacent properties either.
Okay.
But if it's 2 separate developers, you can have 4 megawatts on one property and 4 megawatts on another, providing they're separate developers. That's my
Adjacent
understanding.
to each other?
Adjacent to each other, yes.
Okay.
That's my understanding of the rules from the Illinois Power Association.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
You just, it occurs to me that when these credits are handed out, half might get it of the project and half might not because of the timing. It's 2 separate.
That is correct.
considerations.
These are 2 separate solar farms, even though they're on the same property and right next door to each other. They are separate. One might get approved, one might not. Now, obviously, I think for the property owner, there's a preference as to which one they would prefer. Don't want the one in the middle to get
Right.
approved because then you've got to farm both sides of it. There was talk about the developer being, if they were chosen to decide which one they wanted to build. I don't know that that's ever been clarified yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
We have a motion, correct?
Yes.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, going on. ZBA case 1850, request for a special use permit 121-99C34 solar farm in the A1 agricultural district on a parcel generally situated in section 12 of Pilot Township. The petitioner are O'Connor Family Farms, property owner, and USS Lehigh Solar LLC applicant.
So another request for a special use permit for a 4 megawatt community solar garden on the property outlined in red on the map up there. There's the site plan for it. 2 separate solar gardens, one on the north and one on the east side of the property. The little strip on the southern portion would not be used for the community solar garden. So you see it's like a backward C. That little portion at the bottom would not be used. Zoning board heard this on December 17th and voted 6-0 to recommend the denial of this proposal. 1 member abstained because a relative lives across the street. We had lots of public comment. Christina Midstarfer, Chad Scanlon, Kelly Stilts, Diana Carlson Webb. All of this is in your finding of fact report. In fact, for the new members, in your packet, you should have 3 documents for each case: the application, the staff report that we do when the case comes in, and then the findings of fact report, which is the results of what happened at the Zoning Board of Appeals, in case you're confused on where to look for things. However, there was discussion about conditions, which I did put up here in case, for whatever reason, this would get approved or overturned by Planning and Zoning or the County Board. So there are conditions that were recommended throughout the public hearing process, should it be approved. If you go through the finding of fact report, which is the white document, you will see that we list all the public comments on here. We also show that the zoning board did not agree with number 2. The board finds that number 2 is that the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other properties in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish and impair property values within the neighborhood. The zoning board's findings on this were the board finds that given the unique characteristics of the proposal coupled with the proximity of residents, that the proposal would be injurious to the enjoyment of other properties. Further, the board finds that the property has a LISA score that is in the moderate category for protection, but that it is very close to being in the high category. So that was their reasoning for the denial.
Mr. Featherling.
Mr. Skimmelhorn, it doesn't seem to me that this seems much different than any of the other ones that we've approved in the past. I was wondering, there's 2 property owners adjacent. We've had several, a couple already tonight or today that have already had that many sites across from them. Was it the Lisa score that was the important part of that, or was there another reason?
It was the main focus of that finding was the injury to the enjoyment of surrounding property owners. You are correct, this board has approved many of them in just as close proximity to residential homes.
And with landscape berms and things like that, or landscape areas and things, we've been able to screen. Being involved in a lot of these cases, we were able to screen most homeowners from these sites being detrimental to their enjoyment.
And I don't
really feel as though that this is detrimental to anybody's enjoyment. And the property owner, he owns the property.
That was one of the recommended conditions, was that a landscape buffer be installed between the solar farm and the adjacent homes, if you look at number 4.
Okay. If I own one of those properties, or I buy one of those properties, and I come to the county, and I come into the planning department, and I ask you see the zoning map, you're gonna show me an agricultural zoning for that property, right? We're not changing it, right? It's still agricultural?
You can't hear him?
Is he on?
He's on.
Well,
correct, we have not changed the zoning of the property. That property
and wouldn't I have
was zoned A1 agriculture and still is.
And wouldn't I ask you what could be there in the agricultural district if I bought that property? Things that would be allowed.
We would give you the
area.
list of permitted uses that would be allowed on that property.
And aren't a lot of them more detrimental to the area than a solar farm would be?
Well, I mean, that's kind of subjective, but I would think so. You could certainly have a hog farm there, cattle farm, various forms of agriculture that...
Farm equipment repair, silos, dryers.
Certainly.
Yes.
And those are all permitted. You do not have to ask the board permission to do so.
Right. You could just walk in, get your permit, and walk out the door, and you're done.
Correct.
Okay.
The main concern seemed to be a view, and I don't think you're guaranteed any view when you buy a 5-acre parcel in an agricultural community.
Yeah.
Residential.
One of the citizens, I believe it was Mr. Scanlon, submitted these photos, and I apologize for this one because I scanned it 3 times and that's the best it would come out. But so it's a little washed out. This is the view from his front porch without a solar farm. This is his view from, he claims, from his front porch with a solar farm.
Which doesn't show any landscape.
There's no landscaping shown. It appears to be too close to the road because the solar panels he's depicting there cover the ComEd pole. If you see, the ComEd pole is actually behind, even though the ComEd pole is right at the road, is behind the solar panels. And I'm not sure that they are drawn to the scale of about 10 feet tall. The utility pole is generally about 40 feet tall, and that looks to be at least a third higher than that. So, but the zoning board did see this photo. I can't say whether they based their decision on it or not.
It just, excuse me, it just seems to me that the scale is out of whack on that picture. The solar, there's more spacing in between them. They're separated by small roads for service, and they are set back. I believe is it 100 feet from the setback?
Correct, 100 feet from the road, so it would not be next to that pole.
The picture appears to be that they're like right on the line to me when I look at it. So I don't really understand the difference between this one and the 40 some others that we approved. This property owner has obviously chosen to lease his property. He purchased the property with the idea that he could lease it to another farmer, he could lease it to another business, he could lease it to something else. So I really don't understand what the complication is here. I hate to put things on the board, being that I was the chairman of that board for many years. I just don't see where this one falls into a different category.
Okay, Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I absolutely agree with Mr. Featherling in his assessment. It may sound strange, but you don't have a right to a view. That is not a protected right. I mean, that landowner could put up a 10-foot fence, I believe, or 8-foot, or whatever the height is. They could put a fence around that property without any type of public hearing or anything. That would be just as detrimental that in reality is what that view to the view. So I mean, and it may sound, and I apologize to the people that live there, but you bought the property knowing it was in an ag area. And we have to protect the property owners' rights of the people that own that land, not only theirs.
That's right.
They have rights as well.
Private property rights.
Exactly. So I'm going to be voting to approve this when it comes up for a motion because I don't see any reason why this is any different than any of the other ones that we've
If
looked
you
at.
want to maintain your view, you need to buy acreage.
Yeah.
In other words, buy 40 acres. and
You should have your view out the back of to your property, not
Right.
to someone else.
Right. Well, this is out to the back.
This is the front of Mr. Scanlon's. Mr. Scanlon lives, that house on the left up there. The Mitzdorfers live in the one that's in the middle.
Okay.
Mr. Scanlon did state that the fence would make it look like a prison at the hearing.
And the
But it
last
would be
comment,
land-
The fact is, the fence could be put up at any time, with or without a solar farm. Just simply needs a building permit.
sure. And the last thing I'll say is that, Mr. Chairman, have you
Yes.
recognized? Thank you. The last thing on that would be that we have heard multiple times the testimony of a independent third-party appraiser that's licensed on a state and I believe on a multi-states and even maybe on a federal level.
International.
International level, they lose their license if they are saying what we want them to say, or if the developers, is what they want them to say. That there is no evidence of property value devaluation in these situations. Now, obviously, we can't have that here because they're not built yet. But they've studied the other areas and surrounding demographics in other areas, and there hasn't been that negative effect. So, until there is evidence, there's nothing to consider locally.
There was an impassioned, emotional plea at the ZBA that influenced the members of the board, I feel. And
No evidence was submitted
No.
to refute that.
so I agree. It should go forward.
I would, Mr. Chairman, I would caution the board that if you choose to overturn the Zoning Board of Appeals recommendation, that you develop your own finding for number 2. Some type of wording that describes why you're overturning.
Okay, Ms. Dunbar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a procedural question. Do we always get these even if ZBA votes against giving them the permit?
Yes, ZBA only makes a recommendation.
Okay,
The power of approval lies with the county board, so
thank you.
yes.
Mr. Smith, just a second, okay.
Thank you, sir. Just a question. This is kind of my general area out there, and I know 90% of these people. Am I allowed to vote?
Speak into the mic better.
I'm sorry. My question is, since this is in my area,
Yes,
and I know 90% of these people, am I allowed to vote?
yes.
Okay.
As long as you have no financial interest in that property or an adjacent property.
Nor have I had any discussions with them on it, so.
Okay. Is there, I'm sorry, there was public comment before, and that's what's allowed, but I didn't make an announcement to that effect. You're supposed to fill out a salmon-colored sheet there to make public comment. Because I didn't mention it in the beginning, I'll allow it. No, you don't have to. Just go ahead and go to the microphone. The salmon sheet is behind you.
State your name, please. My name, excuse me. Am I on the mic?
Yes.
Okay, my name's Larry Serene. My wife and I are actually co-owners with Chad Scanlon and Tiffany Scanlon, which is the property. And the one thing I would like to point out is there was a hearing on Monday night. I happen to be a lawyer, which I'm not trying to brag about that or anything, but my concept of a hearing is that when you have a hearing, you develop evidence, you develop comment, and there was no evidence that the petitioner or the applicant met their burden of proof. They were in their finding, in their application, they proposed that there would be nothing injurious to the enjoyment of any neighbors, and that there would be nothing detrimental to the value of their property. And there was no evidence presented to that effect. They have the burden, they are the applicant. They have to prove their case. They did not prove their case.
Okay.
And I don't see how we can proceed to overturn when the evidence is not there. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. What's your name?
Christina Mitzdorfer. I live in the house that's surrounded by this
Yes, ma'am.
prospective solar farm. I want to share with you some facts. The landowners do not live in this county, and they do not have solar panels farms that surround their property in Oswego. A fact is, aesthetics is a very personal observation. Not sure how someone who does not personally have a solar panel farm surrounding their personal residence can decide what can and cannot be aesthetically appealing. That includes your board member who stated that this can be fixed. Do you personally have a solar panel farm that surrounds your property? A show of hands, how many do?
Just continue with
I'm
your
going to
comment.
say that's probably no one. U.S. Solar has 25 watts of current solar panel farms. They are proposing a 4 watt to surround my residence. That is 1/6 of their current use. Seems like a lot to me. I mean, or they're very new at doing this. In fact, landowners have been planning this panel farm with U.S. Solar for months. Their terms on Monday. We were given weeks, and the landowners only reached out to us 4 days ago. Fact, cannot prove there will not be any depreciation of property values. Yes, you stated that there's out of state, that they're bounded by law. I get that. I'm a nurse practitioner. I have to abide by the law as well. But you don't have a personal, actual depreciation value of a property that has had a solar panel in our Kankakee County. There is not one. I know there's not. Fact, there are toxic heavy metals in solar panels for which Mr. Wozniak on Monday said there was not any toxic materials in the solar panels. There is. Cadmium is being the major one. Fact, farming ground on this proposed site has a LISA value of 223.8, 1.2 away from above moderate rating. Farm ground since my home was built in 1882. Fact, cannot guarantee a tornado will not hit the solar panel farm. 46 tornadoes through Kankakee County in the past 10 years, 3 by my property alone in the past 17 years that I've been there. And final fact, placing a solar panel around the 2 sides of my property will decrease the enjoyment of my property. My husband likes to trap shoot. He's a hunter, and we have had farmers around us all the time. A fact is also that these landowners are hobby farmers. They do this as a hobby. They have 2 other 40-acre properties. They hobby farm. I have hobbies as well, but I don't impose my hobby to cause harm to other people.
Okay,
that is all.
Thank you. Mr. Wozniak, rebuttal.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me all right? Let me try and raise this a bit. That's easier. So I wanted to bring to the attention of the committee some of the claims that were made against both us. I wanted to bring to the attention of the committee some of the claims that were made against us, the applicant. My name is Nathan Wozniak. I work for U.S. Solar, the petitioner. Its subsidiary, USS Lehigh Solar. There were several claims made against the owner of the property and about solar in general. This one claim that was just mentioned about hobby farmers, that has the label of being a hobby farmer certainly has implications that could affect the O'Connor Family Farms ability to do business in the county, as this has certain distinctions between the IRS and strings attached for tenant farmers in the area. This is a designation that is false. There were claims made against solar, such as that the constructed and operational facilities are harmful and hazardous to health, contain toxic materials, and that they can even contribute to cancer. These claims were unsubstantiated. No evidence was presented to support these claims, and I had testified to the zoning board that the modules and the equipment that we use is not hazardous and meets safety standards of relevant governing bodies and institutions. To touch on the property value claim, in our report we did reference the county's own findings as I believe prepared by Delbert and the supervisor of assessments Eric Blair, that indicates inconclusive whether property values are affected by solar. Now, as it relates to this petition, no additional evidence was submitted to either support or refute that claim. But I do believe that the zoning board made some speculative and opinionated decisions based on what they think may or may not cause property value change. To address the landscaping and the view, I did reach out to Mrs. Midstarfer several days ago when I was able to obtain her phone number through White Pages. Talked about how we would propose a landscape screening and would be happy to comply with conditions placed upon us by the county board for doing such. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and I think it's hard to regulate what's quote-unquote ugly, looks like a prison, and what someone might find appealing. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Del, when do you have the delivery receipts of the notifications that went out to all adjacent property owners?
Yes.
By law, when do they have to receive those?
They must be mailed 15 days prior to the hearing.
Correct.
And we actually go above and beyond that and mail them again 7 days prior.
Okay, so it's twice, and so we do have those return receipts. And
yes, we do.
Okay, so 4 days is not accurate.
Well, we mail them out 15 days. Now, when they receive them,
we don't know.
We have no control over that.
Okay, because that would be concerning. That would be concerning.
By law, we are required.
Those did not arrive. So we do have the receipts when they were signed.
They're in the file, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Featherwing.
Yeah, Mr. Skimmerhorn, did the notification go in the paper prior to this in the Daily Journal?
A notice goes in the newspaper also at the 15-day mark.
And that's the 15-day mark also?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve this particular farm. I really feel as though there's no way, she mentioned her house being surrounded. I really don't think you can surround the house. There's no room on the, what should be the south side of that residence for, to put any solar farms in there with the setback requirements. So I'm sure it'll just be row crop still. And the fact that, I don't know how many people are allowed to shoot lead off into the farm ground here and there, but I don't understand where trap shooting has anything to do with whether we allow a solar farm or not, because someone likes to trap shoot. Okay. That's just my personal opinion. So, and
can you hear all right? And a little louder.
Being on the zoning board for all those years, I know a lot of time went into this for these guys to prepare for this, ladies and gentlemen. But I also know that you have to have some kind of consistency in your approvals and your denials. It doesn't make any sense to me to just deny one just because. That doesn't seem to outweigh anything that we've had in the past. So is it okay for me to make the motion to would it be overruled?
No, you just make a motion
to approve.
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest that if that is the motion, you also include the conditions.
Okay.
Because they were not included in the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah. Would that be, some of those we required what they call a game fence, so it didn't look like a prison, and some of them, I don't know.
That is one of the conditions, that an 8-foot woven woven wire agricultural fence be used instead of a chain link.
Okay, and that the ground cover will be that contingency with the area to promote farming and agriculture?
It'd be a pollinator friendly. Yes, I can put them up on the screen for you.
Yeah.
These were
and landscaping.
These were the ones that were talked about. Ground cover established on the site will be pollinator friendly. Landscaping shall abide by the weed and grass control plan. An 8-foot woven wire fence will be used instead of chain link. And a landscape buffer will be installed around the adjacent homes, including the one across the street.
Yes, I'd like to include 1 through 4 in my motion, please.
Okay, Mr. Wheeler?
I'd like to second that with the, do we need to include the amendment to what the answer to number 2 would be at this point?
Yes.
That the board finds that there are no unique characteristics of the proposal that would be injurious to the enjoyment of other property. I think that solves what our viewpoint, how it differs from ZBA. Yes. At least on the motion side, the board may feel differently.
Okay, that's it.
Do you accept that amendment?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? You're the second. Okay, now discussion. Any discussion regarding this motion? Ms. Dunbar.
Again, just a procedural question, Mr. Chairman or Mr. Skimmerhorn. In the past, when we've dissented one way or another, we had to state a reason, but that's only, can you explain that
Mr.
again?
Wheeler just did that. So
He stated the finding of fact that on number 2.
Change the finding of, or
Right.
why we went against that.
Right.
Yes. And that is really a protection for the board.
And that would be D or B also, I'm sorry. Wouldn't be 2, it would be B.
2 or B, depending on the report you read.
Okay.
It's the second
Yeah,
one.
right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have a motion to approve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do we need a roll call?
Probably wouldn't hurt.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Olthoff?
Aye.
Mr. Featherling?
Aye.
Ms. Polk? Mr. Payton? Ms. Dunbar? Mr. Fairfield? Mr. Carrico? Mr. Smith? Mr. Swanson? Mr. Wheeler? Motion carries.
All right, going on to ZBA case 1851, request for variances to sections 121-286C1 driveway spacing and 121-9934E lot width, and a special use permit 121-99C34 solar farm in the A1 agricultural district on a parcel generally situated in section 3 of Pilot Township. The petitioners are O'Connor Family Farms property owner and USS Goodrich Solar LLC applicant.
Okay, this one's a little different. It is a special use request for a solar farm on property just off of Goodrich Road, but it's also asking for a lot width variance and a driveway interval variance. The property, as you can see on the map there, only has 60 feet of frontage. It's zoned A1 agriculture. In that district, 330 feet of frontage is required. And you're only allowed 1 driveway per 330 feet of road distance. This would be 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th driveway in that segment of road. The church, which is the northern little square out of the property, has, I believe, 2 or 3 driveways. Well, no, actually that might be sidewalks. Anyway, the driveway for that segment has already been taken, so this would allow another driveway in that segment. This would be 4 megawatts. There's 2 solar farms, eastern one and a western one, each 2 megawatts in size, and they would be about 300 feet behind the eastern property line before they would start.
300 feet.
I think it's about 300 feet was testified from the church's property line to the start of the solar panels.
Yep. Can I ask a question? Is there any other access to the property beside that, what they're requesting?
No, that is it.
Okay.
That is it. It's up to you.
Go ahead, Mr. Wozniak. Is it pertinent? I mean, it obviously is. Okay.
I did just want to share with the committee that the landowners Ryan and Rich O'Connor did meet with several parishioners of the Sacred Heart Church, which is the church in the northeast corner adjacent to the property. I believe last Sunday following Mass, they shared the plans and all the information that we had submitted to the county with our application, and had, to my knowledge, a pretty civil and good discussion with the parishioners. I do not believe that the owner of who received notice attended, but I do believe that several of the parishioners were in attendance as it got passed down the grapevine. But I just wanted to share that with the committee that we have discussed with those property owners.
Okay, Mr. Wheeler.
Mr. Chairman, that kind of commentary is improper in this venue because the people that he's speaking of aren't here to either refute or could validate that statement,
Okay.
so it can't be evidence that we can consider at all.
It would be new evidence.
It would be
right.
new evidence.
Yes.
We can't really.
So disregard.
You didn't hear that, and then no offense, but they have the same rights.
Okay.
They weren't sworn in.
Right.
That's why we have public comment at the beginning. So.
Okay.
All right. So zoning board recommended the approval of the variances 6-0. They did vote separately on the variances and the special use permit because they felt the variance was needed regardless of whether the special use permit was approved or denied. And the special use permit on December 3rd, and they voted 4-2 to approve that with conditions. Public comment was from Mark May, Sam Shane, Dale Pfeiffer, Richard O'Connor, and Thomas Henry. Lisa score on this property is 220.9, which is a moderate rating. They recommended the following 4 conditions. All ground cover established on the site shall be a type which is pollinator friendly to help support agriculture. 2, all landscaping shall abide by any and all rules as outlined in the Weed and Grass Control Plan and is subject to the same penalties as weed and grass. 3, an agricultural style fence will be used instead of the required chain link fence, and landscape screening be installed along the roadway. Landscaping in accordance with section 121.99.c.34.7 between the solar farm fence and the church property. So that area between the church property and the solar farm will receive additional, I believe it's 30 feet of landscaping for that section of our ordinance.
And the vote was 4-2 to approve?
4-2 to approve the special use permit, 6-0 to recommend approval of the variance.
Okay. Is there a motion by Mr. Featherling? Oh, you have a question?
Mr. Skimmer?
Wait a minute. I think we need a motion first.
In motion.
Motion by Mr. Featherling, seconded by Mr. Fairfield. Now, your discussion.
Okay, the 2 nays that were there, was there a finding given to why they were nays, or was there a certain thing in particular that got the nays?
No. No.
Okay.
There was no comment on that.
Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Going on. ZBA case 1852, request for rezoning from R1 single family residential district to A1 agricultural district and a special use permit 121-99C34 solar farm in the A1 agricultural district on a parcel generally situated in section 27 of St. Anne Township. Petitioners are Miedema Farms LLC and Kenneth W. and Shirley A. Miedema, property owners, and USS St. Anne Solar LLC applicant.
Again, this is a request for a special use permit for a 2 megawatt solar farm and also for rezoning of the property from R1 single family residential to A1 agriculture. The property has been zoned residential since 1967 when the county zoning ordinance first went into effect, and it has not been converted into a residential use in the last 50 years. Property is outlined on the map on the screen. There's actually 2 properties that will be combined. I'm sorry, this is a 4 megawatt, not 2 megawatt. There's 2 megawatt solar farms side by side covering the majority of the property. Zoning board recommended approval of the rezoning from R1 to A1 and the special use permit December 3rd, 6-0 with conditions. There was no public comment or objection. Lisa's score for the property is 171.7, which is a low category. And the standard conditions were imposed upon it about pollinator-friendly ground cover, the weed and grass control plan, and an agricultural style fence, and landscaping along the roadways.
Is there a motion to approve by Ms. Dunbar, seconded by Mr. Payton? Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Going on to ZBA case 18-53, request for special use permit 121-99C34 solar farm in the A1 agricultural district on a parcel generally situated in section 17 of Yellowhead Township. Petitioners are Ruth Buikema, property owner, and Paul Buikema, USS Contact Paul Buikema and USS Campbell Solar LLC applicant.
Okay. Another request for a special use permit for a solar farm, 2 megawatt, no, 4 megawatt. On property just outside the Village of Grant Park, located along the railroad tracks north of 9000 North Road. It would use the southern portion of the property. Here's the site plan for it, which would have access to the solar farm off of 9000 Road. Zoning Board of Appeals recommend the approval of the special use permit December 17th with conditions 7-0. There's public comment from Dale Leitz and Ken Erickson. Dale Leitz commented that as long as it didn't affect drainage, he had no problem with it. The applicant showed how that drain tile survey would be done and that it would not affect drainage and that they would repair any drain tiles. He was fine with that. And Mr. Ken Erickson was on the Planning Commission for Grant Park and requested that landscaping be placed along 9000 Road and at the corner with the other road. The LISA scores was 187, which is a low rating, and 5 conditions were placed on this one. The pollinator friendly one, the weed and grass control one, agricultural style fence one, which is an 8-foot woven wire fence. Probably could remove one of those. And for a landscape buffer shall be installed along the south end of the property, and it was recommended by the board that it go at least 100 feet up the west side of the property.
Is there a motion by Mr. Carrico, seconded by Mr. Fairfield? Any discussion? Mr. Smith?
Just a question, is this a 2 or 4, what, or is this an additional thing again?
It's not an additional, I believe it's a 4 megawatt. Is it 2? It's 2 megawatt.
2
I'm sorry,
paper.
2 megawatt.
So,
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. And our last one, ZBA case 18-54, request for a rezoning from I-2 General Industrial District to A1 Agricultural District and a special use permit 121-99C34 solar farm in the A1 Agricultural District on a parcel generally situated in section 34 of Kankakee Township. Petitioners are Vincent Benoit and Christine Benoit, property owners, and USS Bloom Solar LLC.
Okay. This is a request for a 2 megawatt community solar garden and rezoning from I-1 light industrial to A1 agriculture on the Benoit greenhouse property located off of Spiller Road in Kankakee Township, which is outlined on the map on the screen. The site plan for the solar farm is on the screen, and it would be entirely behind the greenhouse structures on the property. The entry to the solar farm would be on the southern edge of the subject site. That's the municipal plan for that area, which shows that the property from 1995's City of Kankakee plan should be used for residential purposes. Zoning Board recommended the approval of the rezoning and the special use permit December 17th with conditions 7-0. We had public comment from John Greasus and Vincent Benoit. Mr. Greasus is on the Grinnell Drainage District, which this property lies within. He provided maps of where the tiles were located on the property and clarified some issues that the drainage district may have with it as far as setbacks from their tiles. The applicant agreed to work with them to resolve any issues that might occur. LISA score was 176, which is a low rating, and they placed 3 conditions on it. I don't know why I have that 4th one there. Pollinator friendly ground cover, the weed and grass control plan, and the agricultural style 8-foot woven wire fence.
Is there a motion to approve? By Mr. Payton, seconded by Mr. Featherling. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Is there any old business?
Mr. Skimmerhorn.
Yes, sir.
And if you can't speak to this, I'll wait till Mr. Quinn gets back. But in your experience, who has the burden of proof on being injured by have an injurious situation? Is that?
Well, the applicant, the burden of proof on all zoning cases is with the applicant to prove their case.
Okay.
However, if an objector is claiming to be injured, that burden is on them to prove how they are injured.
So up until there is a point of perceived injury or real injury, there is no situation.
Right.
And it's up to this board. What I'm getting at is if we are considering things, we have to have absolute evidence of injury or potential injury.
Right.
Likely injury, I guess maybe is what's the best way to look at this?
Put it this way, zoning decisions should be made on facts, not opinion, not hearsay, not rumors, but actual facts. Now, what is a fact is up to the board to decide what's a fact. Generally, anything that is presented that has been created by a professional, such as a property value study, unless there's another document by a different professional that would refute that, that would be a fact. So you should try to base your decisions on
It's
facts.
just my main concern is that everybody has their fair hearing and has an opportunity to have their interests represented. And then what the board decides is what the board decides.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an injury, in my opinion, is if they don't have that opportunity. And that's both sides, the property owner and the adjoining property owners, or whatever the situation may be.
Yeah. The burden of proof is on the applicant, but it's this board to determine whether they've met that burden of proof.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Siri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dell, how many special use permits to date for solar farms have Kankakee County have approved so far?
Approved?
Yeah.
Not counting these, because these haven't officially been approved yet. We had a total of 48.
48?
48. 2 have been withdrawn, and 2 have been denied.
Plus these
so
6.
That includes these. So
how many,
if all of these go through, that would be 44 approved.
Okay. How many pending?
This is it.
This is it?
Mm-hmm.
This is it, although I have been in discussions with a utility grade, which is very preliminary. They are running on a different approval process for the utility grade ones.
A follow-up. How many in adjacent counties have been applied or permitted? You know? I mean, are they doing the same thing in Will and Iroquois? And
I don't think you're seeing too many in Will County. There were a few around Crete. It's been a while since I've checked on any of it. We were by far and large the highest county for the number of applications. I think the next closest to us was up by Rockford with like 32, 35. I can't say how many got approved or denied or anything, but that was like 35 cases.
That's kind of why I wonder why us.
We were the top of the top 3.
Right.
The other one I think was DeKalb was the 3rd highest.
Okay.
I think every county has seen some, but nowhere near the numbers that we've seen.
Right. That's my question. I just wonder. There's always something at the end of the tunnel that we might not know.
There's a reason.
Right. There's a reason.
I'm not 100% sure what that reason is, but there is a reason.
Okay. How many do you think the state might approve?
Last I had heard from a Vice President ComEd was 1 in 7, but that was probably back in June, and based on the numbers at that time, it could very well be 1 in 10 now because of the additional megawatts.
Okay. What if the new administration says all of them and they tax it?
That could certainly occur. This is set forth in legislation, which is the Future Energy Jobs Act. The number of REC credits they'll be giving away, and I believe it's 3 lettings: 52 megawatts in the first, 52 megawatts in the second, and I believe it's 21 megawatts in the third.
Okay.
So that's 140-ish megawatts, and if you add all of ours up, we've got almost all of that.
The control of the state legislature has not changed with the election.
Right.
Now, I don't know if that number was arbitrary when they created it and said, oh, that sounds good or not. I can't say to that, but it seems like a fairly low number, and maybe once they realize the popularity of the program, that they might increase that number. Last I heard it, we had somewhere around statewide was like 800 megawatts in applications for 152 or 140 or something that they're giving away.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. information.
Mr. Chairman.
Just the other side of that is once these credits are determined, who's going to get them, who wins the lottery, then it goes to how many of them are able to are surrounding a substation, and then it goes by if there's only 2 that can fit to uptake on a substation into the grid, and there's 4 that won the lottery, then it'll be by application. The first 2 would get it, and then it has to pass engineering muster. So even if we get, say, half of them that win the lottery here, that doesn't mean we're going to have those farms. In some cases, if the drainage doesn't work, it has to go through a lot of other processes. So people need to understand that this is just the start of this. It's not the end.
There are several other steps that must occur. A little correction on what you said there. If 4 of them around a substation were approved or won the lottery, and the substation could only handle 2, it wouldn't necessarily knock out the other 2, but at that point the developer would have to upgrade the substation and pay for it themselves, which is not likely.
Right.
Okay. But yes, so they have to win the lottery. Then they have to submit all of their construction plans, their road use agreement plans, and all of those get reviewed for drainage and construction. They've got to meet all of that. So there's still other reasons why these would not get approved even if they won their credits.
And they may not do it themselves anyway.
Correct.
They may say, well, we only wanted to do 8, and we got 10.
Very preliminary.
Yeah.
So they still got a ways to go.
I'd like to apologize to the committee for not asking for public comment when we started. Normally we've got the sheets in front of us when there is, and I just forgot to ask, so that would have been taken care of earlier, so I apologize. And what was that? That doesn't need to be put in the minutes. Yes, is there any other motions to come before this committee? I'm asking for a motion. Motion to adjourn by Ms. Dunbar, seconded by Ms. Polk. All in favor say aye. Opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much.